Okay, so it's been a while since I had any time for making a video. Um, the past years I've been putting some time into video editing all my YouTube videos as good as possible when it comes to intros and all that kind of stuff. So, but I noticed something that the camcorders actually getting more and more advanced and it's getting more and more complicated to actually be able to edit the video files because um, the better video quality means that the video file itself will actually be a much more complex, a much bigger video file. So my MacBooks that I'm been using for many years now doesn't really have the capability of editing the videos with a specific high quality. So I mean the 4K videos have been around for a year or so, or maybe more than a year, but it's just until now that the camcorders actually starts to, well, the consumer camcorder actually has the 4K video um recording quality. So I'm not really going into 4K, but I'm just saying that it's kind of like more complicated to edit, let's say, a full HD video on a normal, kind of like a normal MacBook Pro, let's say i5 processor with 2.5 gigahertz or something like that. The basic MacBook, it's not really possible because even though you put in maybe you put in 16 gigs of RAM in there, it doesn't really help you anything because it's actually the processor that needs more power to be able to handle these bigger video files. So I've been thinking about different types of solutions to get it to work the way I want it to work. First of all, I'm not really into PCs or Windows and that kind of shit. So for me, it's actually Mac that is the only thing that I'm using. That's the only thing I have been using for many years now. So I'm not going to use anything else. So I was thinking I want something that is fairly cheap and something that is possible to upgrade during, upgrade in the future because it always comes new stuff, new components, so to speak. And as we know, there is not a lot of Mac computers that's actually able to change hardware. Well, of course, when it comes to RAM and that kind of stuff, but I'm talking about, changing the CPU and that kind of stuff. I've been thinking about a newer iMac, maybe a 27-inch, 2.9 or 3.1 gigahertz, I believe it is. One of the newer iMacs, but hey, it's kind of like $3,000 or so. I'm not really looking into that kind of money right now. I played around with maybe a little too much money the past 6 months here, so gotta keep stuff cheap nowadays. So I was thinking back in the days. Well, some years ago, not back in the days. Talking just some years ago, actually is a computer that could be very suitable for me, and maybe I can get a hold of it for a very cheap price as well. That is actually, it's not an iMac, it's not a MacBook, it's not a Mac Mini, it's definitely not an iPad, it's not an iPhone. it's nothing of this. It's something, I don't think it's not very, it's not the most common computer even these days. I'm talking about the Mac Pro. Yeah. Not the newer one that was released just some maybe a couple of years ago. I'm talking about the older one. They first launched it back in 2006, and it was available until 2013, I believe, 2012 perhaps, with the old chassis, you know, kind of like a desktop chassis, a tower chassis, so to speak. Well, the traditional Mac Pro chassis made of aluminum. That could actually be something. So I have been looking into these computers because there is several models during the years from 2006 to 2012, and I definitely want something that is possible to upgrade when it comes to RAM. That is not way too expensive when it comes to CPU, when it comes to hard drive, you know, when it comes to all this kind of stuff right there. Maybe even the graphics card, yeah. So I'm looking into this, and from 2006 to 2008, I don't believe that is the model I'm looking for, because there is several points, there several downsides with that model that is not very good for me. So I need a computer that I can still upgrade the CPU for a cheap price. And if you don't know what a Mac Pro, the older version is, it's actually a computer with dual CPUs on there. So it's dual processors. So it's actually two processors. So I mean, that's awesome. There is not a lot of these computers around that actually have two CPUs. So I want a model that is actually suitable for upgrading to kind of like more modern stuff, more modern, so I can maybe get kind of like, you know, 12 kernels or so, you know, a very powerful computer. And looking into the models 2006 to 2008, I'm looking on the RAM. So I'm thinking, what about the RAM? Because the older models, if of course, it's very much cheaper than the newer models. So if I want a computer as cheap as possible, I want to look into each model and see how expensive will it be to upgrade this model. So for the older model, 2006, 2008, looking on the RAM, I noticed that it's using DDR2. And looking on the prices, wow, that's a very expensive RAM right there. And there is not a whole bunch to choose from either these days, because the DDR2 is getting pretty old now. So I was thinking, DDR3, that's a must-have. The computer must have DDR3. So that's why the older models just, no, that's nothing for me. Because I'm looking for 2009 to 2012. That's where I need to start to look, because that's the model when it's possible to upgrade to newer CPUs if I want even more power out of the stock computer. And looking on the RAM, it's actually possible to upgrade to 128 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, 128. I mean, that's, when would I ever use that much RAM? I mean, I would be happy to have kind of like 48 or 64 or so. Maybe 32. I mean, that would be more than enough. So that's actually the computer I'm looking for. Mac Pro model 2009 or newer. If you don't know anything about Mac, all models actually have a identification number, and it's connected to 1.1, 1.2, 1.5, you know, all this kind of stuff. And the Mac Pro I'm talking about is actually a 4.1. Yeah, 4.1. So that's what I need. 4.1 or newer. The 4.1 is actually made back in 2009. So that's what I'm looking for. If I can get one of these computers for a cheap price, I will actually go ahead and buy one of those. And actually on these models, it's also possible to upgrade the graphics cards, and that makes this computer even very good for gaming and that kind of stuff. So I'm not really a gamer. I don't play games very often, I must say. I have some few games that I like to play, but it doesn't really happen more than a couple of times a year or so. So when looking into the graphics cards, I can see that there is a whole bunch of them to choose from to get a very powerful computer, I must say. So I'm really into this idea now, and it's perfect for video editing when using the iMovie, as I do, for simple editing. I think I will be able to edit some heavier stuff. I will not run into 4K video right now, but it will be more easy to edit the heavier video files, such as full HD and that kind of stuff. Maybe even the AVC HD files that Sony Handycam and a lot of other camcorders making. The AVC HD files is very heavy files, and there is no way in hell that you can edit such file on a kind of like a basic MacBook Pro with an i5 processor or something like that, because the computer will overheat and it will start to lag immediately. So that is not possible, trust me. I have been looking into that many times. So in that case, that means you need to convert the file to a MP4 file, and that means some quality loss right there to get the file as a smaller file. So that is not possible. But with the Mac Pro, I actually think it's possible with the dual processors. I actually think it's possible to edit even the AVC HD files just as is, you know, just transfer it from the camcorder to the computer and bam, open it in iMovie, and I actually think it's possible to edit the video and get a very high quality video. So that's what I'm looking for. I see the video I've been running for 14 minutes now. I just want to keep this video very short, just to tell you my thoughts and my ideas about editing the videos for YouTube in a simple way, at the same time as I having a computer that is possible to upgrade even in the future. I mean, at least for 5 more years. I mean that's a very good idea, I think. So even though I have a new MacBook, well, it's not brand new. I bought it kind of like almost a year ago now. I think well, yeah, I think it's kind of like more almost a year ago. That's a MacBook Pro. It's a 3.1 gigahertz, 3.1 gigahertz processor. It's on 256 gigs of 256 gigs SSD in there, and it's 16 gigs of RAM in there. It's a very fast computer, the i7 processor is kind of like almost too small for the heavier video files, so not even that computer is able to edit the heavier file because it needs more processor power. That's something that's actually, it needs more power. So Mac Pro, actually I'm going to look into buying one of those if I can find a cheap decent one made in 2009 or newer. So yeah, and if you're into video editing and find it very hard to edit the bigger video files, such as full HD and that kind of stuff, or maybe 4K, I really think you should have a look into the Mac Pro made from 2006 to 2012, because I think you really got a decent computer there with a lot of power and for a very affordable price as well. So I think that's a great idea. So what I'm about to do now is to take this 17 minutes video now and take it to my MacBook Pro with the i7 processor, 3.1 gigahertz I believe it is, and try to edit it. And I'm sure that I will run into some small minor problems, but I will be able to edit it because the processor in full HD videos is not very suitable even for an i7 3.1 gigahertz. So until next time, take care now. Bye bye then.